Picture this. School's back in session, but your kids are struggling to find their rhythm. Homework feels harder, reading feels like a chore, and let's be honest, you're struggling to get back into the routine too. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. Getting back into reading after a break doesn't have to be this hard. The key is to keep reading going, even during the school breaks. But I get it. Breaks are a time for fun, travel, and making memories, and reading can easily get put on the back burner. And I know your kids are probably just as thrilled as mine to get a break from school. So, how do we keep reading part of the routine without it feeling like work for you or your kids? In this episode, we'll talk about why keeping up with reading during school breaks is so important. I'll share fun, practical ways to keep it part of your routine, whether you're staying at home, hitting the road, or juggling a million other things. You'll leave this episode with simple, realistic ideas to keep your kids reading year round. Let's start with why it's worth the effort to keep up with reading during school breaks. Consistency is key when you're building habits, and with reading, it's no different. If you've been making progress with your reluctant reader, you already know that just getting them to crack open a book can sometimes feel like half the battle. Keeping up the momentum you've worked so hard to create is much easier than starting over after a break. I've heard it said that it's the start that stops you. That couldn't be more true than when it comes to reading with reluctant readers. Once the habit takes a hit, the next start can feel like climbing a mountain. Let me give you an example. Right now, I'm recording this in January. We just came off of 2 weeks of winter break, only to have two different winter weather events hit us. One storm extended our break by a day, and then we had 3 remote learning days for the second storm. On top of that, we already have 2 planned days out this month, and there's another winter storm brewing for next week. Let's just say remote learning days aren't exactly moving the needle forward when it comes to skill building. This is a good reminder that breaks aren't just about summer. While we often talk about the summer slide, that big skill regression that can happen during the 2 months kids are off school, it doesn't take long for unused skills to start feeling a little rusty. When you keep reading part of the everyday routine, you're keeping their skills sharp and finely tuned and ready to combat any regression. This way, our kids don't get stuck playing catch up and they can just hit the ground running when they return to school. And it's not just about academics. Reading all year round shows them that books aren't just for school. They can be a source of fun and exploration, a way to recharge when they need some downtime, a source of comfort when they find a character they can relate to, or even an escape when life gets hard. When we make reading part of the everyday routine, even during breaks, it becomes less about keeping up and more about nurturing a lifelong habit. But I know school breaks can throw everyone's routines out of whack. So, how do you fit reading in without it feeling like one more thing on the to do list? Let's talk about some easy ways to make it work. First, start small. If reading over break is new for your family, don't feel like you need to bite off more than you can chew. Aiming for 10 to 15 minutes a day is a great place to start. I want to be very clear. I'm definitely not saying that you need to fill the entire break with reading. It's okay if you miss a day or two. The goal is to do your best to keep reading as consistent as possible. If your break includes travel or jam-packed days of fun, find a time of day that works naturally. Maybe it's a few minutes in the morning to ease into the day, or right before bed when everything's winding down. You can also consider having some ebooks or audiobooks ready to go on your phone, so when you're out and about and need to take a minute to catch your breath, you can fill it with a quick story or chapter. If you're a family with multiple kids, make it a shared activity. Reading together can cut down on the need for separate sessions and help younger siblings develop the habit early. It's also a great time to build your child's confidence. I don't know about you, but I hated being singled out to read in class. I'd be so nervous about making a mistake and worried about what others might think that I'd even try to strategically plan my trips to the bathroom to avoid being called upon. When you read together as a family, that pressure disappears. It's safe, supportive, and actually enjoyable. With JD, we've let him decide on how comfortable he is with reading aloud, whether that's reading an easier sentence in a dual reader, paragraph, a page, or even a chapter. We allowed him to be our guide, and we went from there. And we plan to do the same with Hunter when he's ready. One thing I've learned is to ditch the assignments mentality. In our house, reading is encouraged and incentivized, but it's not framed as homework. Something we do because it's fun, it's relaxing, and it's just part of our normal routine. Now, in general, I don't put a ton of focus on asking comprehension questions or correcting their mistakes when they read, but I definitely take a break from making it a learning moment when they're out of school, over the shorter breaks in particular. Unless they're consistently making the same mistake over and over again, I'll usually let it slide. They get plenty of that correction when they're with their teachers when school returns. Summer's a bit of a different story. I try to build extra reading time in so I can focus on those learning moments during one of our daytime reading sessions and leave the fun for bedtime. I'm sure I'll share more on that later in another episode. Another tip, let your kids pick what they want to read. Comics, magazines, activity books, or novels, whatever it is, keep it low pressure. For example, one year over winter break, JD got 2 new joke books for Christmas. We spent most of that break listening to him read joke after joke. Some had us rolling with laughter, and others, well, let's just say we perfected our eye rolls. But you know what? It didn't matter. He was excited to read, and that's the whole point. I'm not above a little bribery or gamification. Set a short term challenge, like reading for 10 minutes for 10 days, and reward them with a fun outing or special treat at the end. School breaks often mean travel or fun activities, so why not use those experiences to enhance your kiddos' reading? Themed reading can make trips or activities even more memorable by connecting books to real world experiences. For example, if you're heading to the zoo, read about the animals you might see beforehand. During your visit, you can challenge your kids to spot the animals they've read about, and you can also encourage them to read the info boards at each enclosure to learn even more. Not to mention, it sneaks in a real life scenario where reading is useful outside of school. On your way out, you can even pick up a new zoo themed story to read together when you get home. I'm not big on the outdoors, thanks to my allergies, but if you and your family enjoy being out in nature, plan a nature walk. You can bring along a book about local plants, trees, or animals. As you explore, try to match what you see with what's in the book. It's a simple, engaging way to make reading relevant to the world around them. My husband's gotten the boys addicted to gemstone mining. They've picked up spotter guides, and we even bought our own rock tumbler to polish them ourselves at home. And who do you think we got to read the instructions when we were setting it up? That's right, you guessed it, JD. It wasn't that hard to sell. It was his birthday present after all. Maybe you're traveling to a historical site. This is a great opportunity to introduce kid-friendly books about the events or people tied to that location. For example, if you're visiting a battlefield or museum, help your kiddo understand the significance of what they're going to see by reading some historical fiction centered around the time or the place. Like JD reading the I Survived the Battle of Gettysburg, 1863, when we're considering a trip up there this summer. Nonfiction works too, if that's what your kiddo gravitates towards, or even a mix of both. And don't forget about long car rides or flights. These are perfect opportunities for audiobooks. Not to mention, they're a screen-free way to keep your kids entertained and make travel time fly by. If you're up for something more interactive, create a reading scavenger hunt. Let's say your child's been reading about landmarks or famous people. Challenge them to find connections during your trip, like spotting the Liberty Bell on a visit to Philadelphia or identifying the Globe Theatre in London. Had to throw that one in there. You know I'm a London gal. Finally, you can bring along a travel journal for your child to document their trip. They can draw pictures, write about their favorite moments, or even create their own story inspired by what they've experienced. Now, this idea might surprise you, but being a reluctant reader doesn't necessarily mean they hate writing or creating stories. I might have dreaded reading, but I could fill a notebook in a heartbeat as a kid. The use of a journal is a creative way to blend reading and writing and travel into one memorable adventure. Besides, what child is going to hate reading a story they wrote themselves? Even if it's more of a diary entry reminding them of all the cool things they got to see and do on the trip. I know that not every parent has the flexibility to plan all-day outings or travel, or even take time off during the school breaks. If you're working while your kids are on break and they're spending most of their day at camp or with a caregiver, there are still ways to keep reading part of the routine. Chances are your family routine doesn't change much over breaks, unless you manage to get a few days off. But that doesn't mean you can't sneak in extra reading, especially during the summer when it matters most. If your child's in a care program, check in with the staff. See if they can carve out some time for reading, if they don't already. Whether it's quiet reading during downtime or participating in group story time, many programs are happy to support literacy if you let them know that it's a priority for your family. My boys tried camp for the first time this summer, and they had 2 parts of the day where they were allowed to enjoy tablets or other handheld gaming systems that they brought from home. We prefer to monitor that, what they're watching, what they're playing. So we asked if they could ensure the boys spent this time reading instead of looking over the other kids' shoulders. They were more than happy to oblige, and one camp assistant even went so far as to read to them to help keep them engaged. If your kids are spending the day with a grandparent or a babysitter, send along a bag of books tailored to their interests. This makes it easier for the caregiver to get them engaged with reading. It also gives your kids a chance to have a shared reading experience with someone other than you. They can learn so much by watching others read. Plus, it's a great bonding experience, and it reinforces that reading is important and enjoyable no matter who they're with. Local resources can also be a big help. Libraries and bookstores offer story times, book-themed crafts, or even seasonal reading challenges. These events are a fantastic way to keep your kids entertained while also fostering a love of reading, and they don't require much effort on your part. When you are home, make the most of your time. A quick bedtime story can help keep the reading habit alive, even if your schedule's tight. Keeping up with reading over breaks isn't always easy, but every effort you make now helps set your kids up for success, not just in school, but in life. Even just 10 minutes a day can make a huge impact, and when the break ends, you'll be so glad that you kept the habit alive. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm here to cheer you on every step of the way. So keep going. And as always, happy reading. Next week, we'll be discussing something we all probably struggle with: finding the time to read for ourselves. Life gets busy, and reading often takes a back seat. But here's the thing: it's not just about you. Yes, I want you to have the time to recharge and get sucked into a good story, but modeling a love of reading can have a big impact on your kids. I'll share why it's so important, how to fit it into your busy life, and some tips to jumpstart your own reading habit. Make sure you tune in.